The instant she entered the training facility, humiliation washed over her. Her worn clothing drew mockery. People called her a background extra or someone who picks up bullet casings. One of the instructors even joined the ridicule, shouting from across the grounds, "Without a proper badge, remove your coat and show us your credentials." A large trainee moved forward, seized her neckline, and pulled it downward before the assembled group. The entire facility went completely quiet when they saw the white serpent wrapped around a blade on her back, the secret emblem of Ghost Viper. When the senior instructor knelt down on one knee and gave her a salute, addressing her as Commander Sarah, not a single person dared to make a sound. In the center of that dirt-covered field stood Sarah Walker, her brown locks hanging freely, her thin body hidden beneath a worn, oversized top. Her hands, marked by calluses and roughness from countless hours of hard work, remained motionless by her sides even though the ripped material of her neckline drooped limply over her shoulder. Black Ridge Private Training Center resembled a stronghold constructed from metal and cement. This was where the privileged, former soldiers, private guards, and protectors of the wealthy received instruction to become invincible. Yet at that moment, every gaze was directed at her. The atmosphere seemed dense, as if time itself had paused. Sarah's expression remained unchanged. Her gentle yet intense gaze swept over the gathering, observing every smirk that had disappeared, every chuckle that had ceased. The trainee who had torn her clothing, a massive man called Kyle, was retreating, his hands shaking as if he'd just made contact with something lethal. No one uttered a word. The sole noise was the distant hum of a generator. "Before we continue, could you help me out briefly? Take out your device, press that like Ike on, leave a comment down below, and follow the channel. It's incredibly important to spread narratives like this one about Sarah, narratives that capture your emotions and refuse to release them. Okay, let's return to the story. That morning, Sarah had arrived at Black Ridge in her usual manner. Her provisional cleaning staff badge was fastened to her waistband, her equipment sack draped across one shoulder. Her athletic shoes showed signs of wear. Her denim pants had a rip near the kneecap. And that top, excessively large and somewhat threadbare, gave her the appearance of someone who had wandered in from elsewhere. She traveled silently, her footsteps gentle on the smooth cement flooring, her gaze lowered just sufficiently to escape notice. However, in an environment like Black Ridge, where pride was as cutting as the blades used in training, she was conspicuous. Not by choice, but because she was out of place. The trainees were all brawn and confidence, clothed in military equipment or expensive athletic wear. Their speech was boisterous, their visibility even more so. Sarah remained unnoticed until she became impossible to ignore. The initial insult arrived early in the primary instruction area. A lanky woman called Vanessa, a trainee sporting a sleek ponytail and an athletic outfit that likely exceeded Sarah's monthly housing costs, was positioned against a weight rack. Her companions, an exclusive group of former military personnel, were chuckling about something as Sarah passed by pushing a trolley filled with sanitation materials. Vanessa's gaze fixed on her, and a deliberate, malicious grin formed on her features. "Is that ensemble from the costume department?" she remarked, her tone penetrating the space. The statement was cutting, designed to wound, and it succeeded. Several heads rotated, and the mockery began, quietly initially, then more loudly. A thick-set man, named Mike, his arm muscles pushing against his top, contributed his own comment. "Apologies, custodian. You've entered the incorrect space. This is actual instruction, not a television production." The collective erupted, their sounds reverberating off the metallic surfaces. Sarah was cleaning a workout bench, her actions unhurried and consistent. She didn't immediately raise her gaze. She placed her cleaning cloth down, folded it a single time, and then faced them. "I've been designated to assist the training areas," she stated. Her tone was gentle, as though she was merely presenting information. No fury or embarrassment colored it, yet that only intensified Vanessa's amusement. Assist? What's your role here? Gathering discharged shells? That outfit isn't convincing anyone. Mike moved closer, his smirk broad, his gaze gleaming with cruelty. Indeed, dear. You appear as though you entered from a second-hand shop. Are you certain you haven't lost your way? The space was alive with energy now. Trainees halting their exercises to observe, some murmuring, others openly grinning. Sarah's jaw clenched just slightly, yet she remained silent. She retrieved her cloth and resumed her task, her hands working as if nothing had occurred. Yet the ridicule persisted. Later, during the morning hours, Sarah received instructions to sanitize the changing area, a location heavy with the odor of perspiration and self-importance. While she cleaned the seating, a cluster of trainees headed by a lean woman called Tara burst in, their equipment bags suspended from their shoulders. Tara, recognized for her caustic remarks and tireless drive, noticed Sarah and expressed contempt. "Well, well. It's the charity recipient," she commented, hurling her bag onto a bench with such intensity it displaced Sarah's cleaning materials to the ground. The spray container tumbled, releasing liquid across the tiles. Tara continued her assault. "What follows? Will you shine our footwear, or do you simply enjoy lingering? Where you're unwelcome?" The others chuckled, one kicking the dropped bottle in Sarah's direction like a sports ball. Sarah crouched to retrieve it, her hands unwavering, though her lips compressed into a narrow line. "I'm performing my duties," she stated, her tone subdued. Tara approached nearer, standing over her. "Your duties? This area belongs to us, not your amusement zone. Depart before we force you out." The cluster moved in, their silhouettes casting over her. Yet Sarah rose, her gaze meeting Tara's briefly before she pivoted and departed, abandoning the spilled cleaning solution behind. Malice has a tendency to proliferate, particularly in environments like this. By mid-morning, the taunts had pursued her outdoors to the instruction field, an expansive, dusty expanse dotted with objectives, challenge courses, and accumulations of discharged casings. Trainees were executing exercises, discharging rubber projectiles, calling out instructions. Sarah was present, clearing debris near the perimeter, her equipment sack near her feet. The sun hung high, the atmosphere was heated and arid, and the trainees thrived in their domain, their voices transmitting over the sound of mock gunfire. That's when an assistant trainer named Greg noticed her. He was a wiry individual, mid-30s with closely cropped hair and a permanent scowl. He associated with Vanessa's group, constantly seeking opportunities to demonstrate authority. He formed his hands into a megaphone around his mouth and called out, "Listen, custodian, this is a restricted area. If you lack proper identification, remove the coat and demonstrate it." The nearby trainees halted, their heads rotating, anticipating entertainment. Sarah stood upright, her hand positioned on the cleaning tool handle. "I possess a provisional authorization," she stated, her tone remaining composed. "I'm not required to—" But Greg interrupted. Her, approaching her directly, his footwear creating dust clouds. "If you're concealing nothing, remove the jacket. Or are you assuming someone else's credentials?" The audience was expanding now, perhaps 20 trainees, their expressions displaying a combination of entertainment and inquisitiveness. Vanessa was present, her limbs folded, that identical arrogant smile on her features. Mike called out, "Correct, let's witness it. Demonstrate you're not merely some insignificant person infiltrating." Sarah's gaze flickered to him, then returned to Greg. She remained motionless. She didn't reach for her jacket. She simply remained there, her countenance uninterpretable, as though she was waiting. As the gathering jeered, a fresh voice penetrated through, saturated with artificial compassion. It was Jenna, a trainee with a refined smile and a standing for diminishing others while feigning kindness. She advanced, grasping a writing board, her gaze sparkling with ill will. "Oh dear, don't be timid," she declared loudly enough for all to perceive. "If you're genuinely personnel, you must possess some abilities, correct? Why don't you demonstrate them? Grasp a practice weapon? Discharge a round? Or are you simply here to clean our disorder?" The gathering exploded with amusement, some applauding, others demanding Sarah demonstrate her capabilities. Jenna presented her a rubber band weapon from a close-by storage unit, her smile unchanging. Sarah accepted it, her digits enclosing around the handle, but she didn't raise it. She simply observed Jenna, her stare unwavering, then positioned the weapon down on a container. "That's not within my responsibilities," she stated, her tone quiet yet resolute. Jenna's smile contorted. Predictable. All words, no ability. Return to your cleaning implement? Failure. The gathering's amusement pursued Sarah as she rotated away, her shoulders upright, but her hands gripped tightly around the cleaning tool handle. That's when something transformed. Subtle, yet undeniable. Blee. During an intermission in the exercises, a trainee named Marcus, among the more reserved ones, was having difficulty reconstructing his practice weapon following a timed activity. The components were distributed on a surface, and he was visibly agitated, his hands trembling. Sarah, cleaning in proximity, halted and glanced at the surface. Without speaking, she approached, retrieved the bolt mechanism, and inserted it into position with a singular, smooth action. Then she positioned the gas cylinder and secured the upper section, all within fewer than 10 seconds. Marcus observed, his jaw dropping, as she presented him the now assembled weapon. "Attempt it now," she stated, her tone gentle before departing. The nearby trainees became silent, their gazes expanded. Vanessa, who'd been observing from a remove, became immobile, her water container midway to her lips. Nobody chuckled. Briefly, the field seemed motionless, as though the atmosphere itself was suspending its breath. Yet the ridicule didn't cease. It intensified in ugliness. During the midday meal, Sarah received instructions to remove trays from the dining area, an enormous space filled with trainees. As she traveled between surfaces, a cluster headed by a muscular trainee named Derek decided to amuse themselves. Derek, recognized for his boisterous voice and malicious nature, seized a tray of partially consumed food and intentionally overturned it onto the ground, dispersing sauce and grain across Sarah's route. "Accidental," he stated, his tone mockingly guiltless. "I suppose you have additional work now, custodian." The surface erupted in amusement, and others participated, hurling napkins, drinking tubes, and fragments of food onto the disorder. Sarah halted, her tray held in one hand, and observed the accumulation. Her expression didn't alter, but her gaze intensified briefly. "You overlooked a location," he stated, indicating a stray fried item near Derek's foot. The surface went quiet, uncertain if she was jesting. Derek's face flushed. "Continue speaking and you'll be consuming that from the ground," he retorted. Sarah didn't respond. She simply knelt, commenced cleaning, and maintained her stare on the ground, her quietness more powerful than their provocations. Circumstances shifted during a weapons exercise. A trainee named Carter, youthful and overconfident, mishandled his grip on a practice pistol. A rubber projectile discharged incorrectly, traveling toward the rear of another trainee who'd stumbled and collapsed. The gathering didn't observe initially. They were excessively concentrated on Sarah, but she witnessed it. She was approximately 10 feet distant, cleaning near a pile of containers when her head jerked upward. In a singular action, she released the cleaning tool, swung her equipment sack from her shoulder, and elevated it precisely as the projectile approached. The sack intercepted the projectile with a muted impact, halting it mere inches from the collapsed trainee's throat. The noise caused several heads to rotate, but by the time they observed, Sarah was already lowering the sack, her expression empty as though it was insignificant. The collapsed trainee scrambled upward, bewildered, expressing quick gratitude before departing hastily. Nobody else appeared to grasp the complete significance of it, but several trainees exchanged glances, their amusement diminishing momentarily. "What occurred there?" someone murmured. Sarah didn't respond. She simply retrieved her cleaning tool and resumed her task. The instant passed, yet it created a ripple. Some of the trainees began observing her more closely, their gazes remaining on her hands, her actions. She wasn't merely rapid, she was exact, like someone who'd received instruction for numerous years. Yet the malice didn't relent. That afternoon, during a collective bee rifing in the instruction hall, Sarah received orders to clean the display screen. As she worked, a trainee named Rachel, a former intelligence operative with a talent for public humiliation, rose and indicated her. "Wait a moment," Rachel stated, her tone saturated with disdain. "Why is the custodian positioned there? This is a restricted session. She's likely recording information to market to some publication." The space erupted in amusement, heads rotating to Sarah, who was cleaning the screen. Rachel persisted. "What's contained in that sack of yours? Espionage equipment? Or simply additional cloths?" The trainees celebrated, some striking their fists on the surfaces. Sarah halted, her cloth still in hand, and rotated to face the space. "I'm here to sanitize," she stated, her tone unwavering. Rachel expressed contempt. "Then sanitize more rapidly and depart. You're diverting the genuine professionals." Sarah's hand compressed on the cloth, but she rotated back to the screen, her quietness penetrating more profoundly than any comeback. Then arrived a moment nobody anticipated. As the briefing concluded, the display device flickered, presenting a grainy photograph of a training activity from previous years. It was a cluster of operatives in military equipment, their features obscured except for one. A youthful woman, her locks secured back, stood at the periphery, her stance unmistakable. The space went quiet as several trainees examined the screen, then at Sarah, who was gathering her materials. The similarity was striking. Vanessa, positioned near the front, rose, her face losing color. "Wait, is that her?" she murmured loudly enough for others to perceive. Before anyone could react, Sarah glanced at the screen, her expression unchanged, and disconnected the display device with a rapid, intentional pull. The picture disappeared. She retrieved her sack and departed, abandoning the space filled with inquiries. Nobody ventured to ask openly. Greg, the assistant trainer, was still agitated from earlier. He'd interpreted Sarah's composed resistance as a personal affront, and now he was seeking a method to re-establish dominance. He approached hastily during an intermission in the exercises, his face flushed, his tone loud enough to attract a gathering. "You believe you're exceptional, correct? Engaging in games with that sack. This is a protected installation, not entertainment. Display your authorization or you're expelled." Sarah positioned her cleaning implement down, unhurried and intentional, and rotated to face him. "I displayed it at the entrance," she stated, her tone balanced. "It's fastened to my waistband." Greg expressed derision, approaching nearer, his digit jabbing the atmosphere. "Insufficient. You could have stolen that. Remove the jacket. Demonstrate you're legitimate or I'm summoning security." The gathering was more substantial now. Trainees assembling in an informal circle, their devices active, some capturing, others murmuring wagers on how this would develop. The harassment achieved a fresh depth the following day. During a live discharge simulation, Sarah received instructions to reset the objective range between sessions. As she traveled across the field transporting a pile of metallic plates, a trainee named Ethan, a former marksman with a malicious nature, determined to make her the objective. He loaded a practice weapon with a reduced velocity paint projectile and discharged it at her feet, dispersing fluorescent green across her denim pants. The gathering celebrated with amusement as Sarah stumbled, the plates clattering to the ground. Ethan reloaded and discharged again, this instance striking her equipment sack, paint trickling down the fabric. "Continue moving, custodian," he declared, encouraging the others. Additional trainees participated, hurling empty water containers at her. Their celebrations intensifying with each strike. Sarah halted, her hands gripping the sack, paint smearing her digits. She observed Ethan, her gaze frigid, and stated, "You're squandering ammunition." The gathering's amusement wavered, but Ethan's face contorted with fury. "Continue speaking, and I'll target higher," he retorted. Sarah retrieved the plates individually and departed, her footsteps unwavering despite the paint trickling down her limbs. That's when another component of the mystery materialized. During a routine equipment inspection, a trainee named Holt, a scarred veteran, was examining a container of training equipment when he discovered something unusual. A diminutive black apparatus concealed under a pile of protective garments. It was a military communications device, far superior to what Black Ridge utilized. Holt's hands became immobile as he rotated it, observing a faint engraving, a serpent wrapped around a blade. He glanced at Sarah, who was cleaning a proximate storage unit, her back to him. Without speaking, he inserted the apparatus into his pocket and departed, his expression rigid. Subsequently, in the sleeping quarters, he displayed it to several trusted trainees, his tone subdued. "This isn't typical equipment. If she's transporting this, she's not merely a custodian." The others observed, their doubt wavering, but nobody chuckled. The atmosphere seemed more oppressive, like a tempest was approaching. The gathering's malice reached its peak during a team construction activity. Sarah received orders to transport water containers to the trainees, who were separated into units for a mock assignment. As she approached Vanessa's team, they assaulted her like a collective. Vanessa seized a container from Sarah's crate and emptied it over her head, the water saturating her top and locks. "There, now you're sanitized," she stated, her tone malicious. The others participated, dispersing additional water, some expectorating into the crate, others repeating, "Submerge the rodent." Sarah remained there, water trickling from her locks, her garments adhering to her skin. Her hands shook briefly, but she didn't retreat. "Are you finished?" she inquired, her tone subdued, nearly a murmur. Vanessa chuckled, but it was compelled, as though she'd anticipated more of a reaction. The gathering continued repeating, but Sarah retrieved the crate, water splashing over the peripheries, and departed, her saturated athletic shoes creating impressions in the dust. The trainees' amusement pursued her, but several, like Holt, observed in quietness, their expressions taut. Then arrived a moment that altered the direction. During a nocturnal exercise, the facility security mechanism malfunctioned, securing the weapons storage. Trainees were frantic, incapable of accessing their equipment for a timed activity. Sarah, who'd been sanitizing the control space, approached the console, her digits traveling over the keypad with a velocity and exactness that quieted the space. She entered a 12-digit sequence, her gaze concentrated, and the mechanism signaled, releasing the weapons storage entrances. The trainees observed, their objections expiring in their throats. Daniels, who'd been summoned, observed from the entrance, his expression uninterpretable. "How did you possess that sequence?" he inquired, his tone subdued. Sarah didn't observe him. "I observe carefully," she stated, retreating to her cleaning implement. The space remained quiet as the trainees departed, their glances remaining on her, some with admiration, others with discomfort. That's when Kyle, the substantial trainee, advanced through, his expression contorted with a combination of fury and enthusiasm. He was a former Marine, constructed like a military vehicle with a chuckle that could vibrate a space. He'd been absorbing the gathering's vitality throughout the day, and now he witnessed his opportunity. "Acceptable," he stated, his tone resonating. "I'll execute it myself, so this entire facility recognizes she's merely refuse." Before anyone could respond, he seized the neckline of Sarah's top and pulled it downward forcefully. The material tore with a cutting rip, revealing her shoulder and portion of her back. The gathering inhaled sharply, then became silent. There, extending over her shoulder areas, was a stark white marking, a serpent wrapped around the handle of a blade. The ghost viper emblem. Kyle became immobile, his hand still grasping the torn material, his gaze expanded. Vanessa's smirk disappeared, her face losing all color. Mike retreated a step, his mouth partially opened as though he'd forgotten how to articulate. Someone in the gathering murmured, "Halt! That's the authentic ghost viper marking. Sacred heavens." Sarah remained motionless. She didn't elevate her top or attempt to conceal the marking. She simply rotated her head, unhurried and intentional, and observed Kyle. Her gaze was frigid, not furious, but cutting, as though she was perceiving directly into him. "You possess the audacity to disrobe someone who's terminated lives to persist," she stated, her tone subdued, each term weighty. Kyle faltered. I was unaware." She approached nearer, her stare never deviating. "And that's the difficulty. The individuals who lack knowledge are the most hazardous, not because they possess strength, but because they possess stupidity." The quietness was overwhelming. The gathering was immobile, their devices still elevated, but nobody was capturing any more. They were simply observing, attempting to process what they'd witnessed. Holt, the veteran trainee, advanced, his tone penetrating through the murmurs. "Don't compel her," he stated. "I've witnessed that marking once previously. If it's authentic, she was component of a unit no individual dares identify. The others rotated to him, some expressing derision, but Holt didn't retreat. He observed Sarah, and briefly, something transferred between them. Not identification, but a type of comprehension. The tension was oppressive, as though everyone was anticipating the subsequent development. That's when Colonel Daniels, the senior instructor, materialized. He traversed through the gathering, his footwear heavy on the ground, and when he witnessed Sarah, he halted abruptly. His gaze went directly to the marking, and his entire body appeared to stiffen, as though he was observing a specter. Yet the concluding impact arrived before Daniels could articulate. A trainee named Layla, frantic to reclaim dominance of the narrative, seized a voice amplifier from a proximate surface and activated it, her tone reverberating across the field. "Listen, everyone. Let's provide acknowledgement for the custodian who believes she's a legend," she declared, her tone mocking. "Proceed, let's witness that marking again. Display your covert operative actions." The gathering hesitated, but several chuckled, encouraged by Layla's audacity. She persisted, circling Sarah, the voice amplifier producing harsh sounds. "What follows? You'll inform us you're an espionage agent or simply weep and depart homeward?" Sarah remained motionless, her torn top fluttering in the wind, her gaze fixed on Layla. She didn't articulate, didn't react, but her quietness was an obstacle. Unyielding. Layla's tone wavered, the voice amplifier descending slightly, but she advanced, her terms intensifying in pitch. The gathering's amusement expired as Sarah advanced one step forward, her stare securing onto Layla's, and the voice amplifier became silent. Daniels interrupted the moment. He descended to one knee, his right hand positioned over his cardiac organ. "I served as assistant instructor for Ghost Viper instruction in 2010, he stated, his tone rough yet distinct. "I offer apologies for this affront, Commander Sarah." The entire facility became immobile. "You could have perceived a pin descending, Commander Sarah, H." The terms struck like a shock current. Vanessa's hands descended to her peripheries, her face white as fabric. Mike appeared as though he desired to descend into the ground. Kyle was trembling now, his gaze expanded, tears commencing to form. Layla released the voice amplifier, her hands shaking, her audacity vanished. Then Sarah confirmed it. She accessed her pocket and extracted a black credential bordered in gold with a faint embossed symbol that corresponded the marking on her back. She elevated it, not for display, but as though it was a key she'd been anticipating to utilize. "I'm the principal financial supporter of this initiative," she stated, her tone unwavering. "The trainee roster has been modified. Anyone who humiliated another individual must depart. Immediately." The gathering didn't transfer initially. It was as though they couldn't accept it. Then Kyle commenced weeping. Not loudly, not theatrically, merely quiet sobs that caused his shoulders to convulse. He attempted to articulate something, perhaps an apology, but Sarah didn't observe him. She rotated away, her torn top still suspended from one shoulder, and commenced traveling toward the primary structure. The trainees separated for her, nobody venturing to encounter her gaze. Vanessa was immobile, her hands compressed into fists, her lips shaking as though she desired to articulate something but couldn't locate the terms. Mike simply observed the ground, his face flushed. Greg appeared as though he was going to experience illness. He opened his mouth, perhaps to dispute, but one glance from Daniels quieted him. Layla was retreating, her voice amplifier abandoned on the ground, her face losing color. The atmosphere was oppressive, the type of quiet that pursues a tempest. The repercussions struck forcefully and rapidly. By the subsequent morning, Kyle was absent, terminated immediately, his identity. He erased from the initiative. Information proliferated that he'd been prohibited from every private protection organization in the nation. His occupation terminated before it commenced. Vanessa's endorsement agreement with a premium equipment corporation disintegrated. The information struck social platforms and individuals were demolishing her digitally, republishing segments of her ridiculing Sarah. Mike's guide, a retired military leader, abandoned him, declining to be associated with someone who'd transgressed that boundary. Greg was reduced in rank, relocated to a desk occupation in a different region, his authority eliminated. Tara's petition for an exclusive protection agreement was declined, her identity flagged for behavior complications. Derek's fitness establishment, where he boasted about his Black Ridge position, lost its financial support after a widespread video of the food hurling incident emerged. Ethan's marksman qualification was withdrawn, his documentation marked with a disciplinary notation. Rachel's intelligence organization released her, referencing unprofessional behavior. Layla's social platform accounts, where she'd published about her authority at Black Ridge, were inundated with remarks calling her accountable, her standing in devastation. Sarah didn't remain to observe it transpire. She was returned to employment the subsequent day. Identical oversized top, identical quiet footsteps. Yet now individuals witnessed her, not because she requested it, but because they couldn't assist it. The method she traveled, composed, intentional, as though she possessed exact knowledge of her destination. It was transformed now, or perhaps it had constantly been that method, and they'd merely been excessively sightless to observe. She didn't discuss what occurred. She didn't require to. The marking, the credential, the salute, they articulated more powerfully than terms ever could. Several days subsequently, something else occurred. Something nobody disregarded. It was a peaceful afternoon. E-field vacant except for several trainees executing circuits. Sarah was positioned on a seating structure outside, consuming a sandwich from a paper container, her equipment sack near her feet. The sun was descending, projecting elongated silhouettes across the dirt. A black vehicle arrived, refined and unmarked, the type of transportation that causes you to observe twice. A man emerged, tall, broad-shouldered, early 40s, with brief dark locks and a face that didn't reveal much. He was clothed in a plain jacket and denim pants, but the method he conducted himself indicated he wasn't merely anybody. He traveled directly to Sarah, and the several trainees in proximity halted, their gazes secured on him. He didn't articulate much, merely leaned downward, murmured something in her auditory organ. She acknowledged once and presented him half her sandwich. He accepted it, positioned beside her, and they consumed in quietness as though it was the most typical occurrence in existence. Nobody required to inquire who he was. The method the atmosphere transformed when he materialized, the method Daniels, who occurred to be traveling past, straightened upward and provided a quick acknowledgement. It was sufficient. This was her spouse. And when he was present, the entire facility felt transformed, as though the ground itself was suspending its breath. Sarah didn't observe the trainees monitoring her. She didn't require to. She merely completed her sandwich, removed the fragments from her hands, and rose. Her spouse rose also, and they traveled to the vehicle collectively, his hand positioned gently on her back. The method she traveled, unwavering, unhurried, her head elevated, communicated more than any address could. She wasn't demonstrating a concept. She was merely existing her authenticity, and that was sufficient. The facility returned to normalcy, or as normal as it could become. Exercises operated, trainees declared, existence advanced. Yet Sarah's narrative remained. Trainees murmured about her in the sleeping quarters. Instructors articulated her identity in hushed tones. She wasn't a legend. She was authentic, and that caused her more significant. The individuals who'd ridiculed her, who'd chuckled and jeered, they were absent, their identities diminishing like dust in the wind. And Sarah, she was still present, cleaning the surfaces, transporting her sack, her marking concealed under that identical worn top. For the individuals who'd been evaluated their entire existences, the ones who'd been regarded downward or informed they didn't belong, Sarah's narrative struck profoundly. It wasn't about vengeance or magnificence. It was about remaining upright, even when the existence attempts to demolish you. It was about transporting your authenticity, quiet and unwavering, until the moment it articulates for itself. You weren't incorrect for accepting faith in yourself. You weren't isolated in your struggle. And when the dust resolves, the individuals who attempted to fracture you, they're the individuals who descend. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe for